topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom, your insatiably curious culinary couple. We enjoy traveling the world to bring you the amazing people we meet when we eat, drink, explore, and find inspiration. And we hope you do too when you watch this show and listen to all our podcasts, which you can be heard on 65 podcast channels around the world. And we're in our, 13th year? 12th year? I lost track. We started in 2014. So we have an amazing library of interviews. So as you follow us, you know we're in Europe a lot. And we're lucky because we get a lot of insider knowledge on where to go and what to eat. And of course, what to drink. But don't you want to do that as well when you travel on your own? Don't you want to experience where the locals dine out, find out those little hidden farmers markets and places to pick up that special sandwich or those cheeses with someone who's really in the know? Well, we all do, because that's really what it's about, really meeting people and getting to know the intersection of what we call culture and culinary. It's absolutely perfect. And we had the opportunity to do that when we had a few rare free days in Rome. That's why we have this great backdrop behind us. We took a Trastevere Twilight tour with a company called Eating Europe. It does premium culinary tours in 20 cities in Europe. And it was actually started by an American. It started as a single tour in Rome, and it was started by Kenneth Dunn, who is an American living in Italy. Gee, how fabulous. And he joins us today to share his own journey, how he went from Pennsylvania, where he grew up, to Rome, and how he started Eating Europe and has grown it into really one of the top-rated culinary tour companies in Europe and on all your favorite sites like Travel, TripAdvisor, and Viator. So Kenneth Dunn, welcome to the Connected Table.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy to be here with you guys.
Well, you know, we love your trip. We've written about it and talked about it. And Trastevere is such an interesting neighborhood. But you grew up in Pennsylvania, where we've actually spent a lot of time driving back and forth because we lived on the road for a year. What was it like for you back then? What was your family like? Were you food people or not food people?
I would say sort of food people. I mean, so I grew up outside Philadelphia, about a half hour outside the city. And, living in kind of the suburbs, you're kind of limited to your options, tons of Italian places. And what I find most fascinating is all the places that were there when I was a kid are still there, all the Italian places. Other kind of restaurants have come and go, but all those kind of local family Italian restaurants and pizza shops are still all there. Mm-hmm. And so that was really kind of our thing. We had like 3 different pizzerias within maybe 2 miles, and everyone in my family had a different one that was their favorite. And we'd kind of fight over where we'd order from or go out to. And then going into the city was more of like, even though it was only a half hour away, that was kind of more of a special event. And we had a handful of kind of our favorite spots in the city, many of which were in South Philadelphia in the Italian neighborhood. So kind of beyond that, I don't think, that's why I wouldn't say we're huge foodies growing up. I mean, that kind of came later for me personally as I traveled the world and experienced different cuisines. But certainly kind of Italian cuisine and Philadelphia style Italian food was was a big part of growing up around Philadelphia. Did I lose you for a second?
You did lose us.
It's called heat wave.
Ah, okay.
So just to our listeners, we are experiencing in New Orleans an uncommon heat wave. You may be experiencing it, Ken, in Rome, but that sometimes makes things a little unstable. We
Got it.
Thank you, Mom Nature. But anyway, you were talking, sorry, listeners, sorry, Ken. You were talking about growing up, and pizza seemed to be a big thing in your life. I just have to ask you, Philadelphia cheesesteak. Do you like it, and where do you get it? Since you're a Philadelphia guy.
Absolutely like it.
What's
Yeah.
not to like?
So my favorite place is that's another huge debate. I was saying in my family, I don't know when I lost you. For us, we had like 3 or 4 local pizzerias, and everyone in the family had a different kind of favorite one. Within Philadelphia, what's the best cheesesteak is probably the biggest, most hotly debated topic. For me personally, I've always gone with Jim's, which is on South Street. It's definitely one of the institutions. There's a place called Angelo's, which seems to be like kind of the hottest spot over in the last 5 or 6 years. But Jim's has been there for probably 40 years. And that is, whenever I'm back, I need to go there and pop in for a cheesesteak. So that's my spot.
Well, we think Philadelphia is awesome. So we like going there whenever we can. Now, you traveled a lot when you were younger. Was that before or after you were working in marketing in New York?
So I was actually afterwards. So I was living and working in New York for about 4 or 5 years. I had my own event marketing company with a couple partners. And then I just got the itch I'd lived in the States pretty much my whole life, except for 1 semester in Spain during college, and just felt like there's so much more to see, to do, the experience. So I sold my kind of my shares or my percentage of the business to my partners and put on a backpack and traveled for what was supposed to be 1 year and ended up being several. And that was really where I kind of cultivated my love for, experiencing local cuisines while traveling, going to markets, doing all the kind of things which you kind of touched on in the introduction, just getting immersed into a local food scene, a local cuisine. That was where that seed was really first kind of planted.
So what got you to Rome? We know, but tell our listeners.
So I came to Rome back in 2009. My wife at the time, we were both studying in Washington, D.C. So that was kind of the second part of my career. I went back to grad school for international development. I'd been living abroad and working on projects in urban agriculture in Colombia and Asia, and decided to kind of study that. Met my ex-wife. She got a job here in Rome for the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is a UN agency. And we thought we'd move here for, I think, 11 months was that first contract. And now I've been here for 15 years. So it was that wasn't the original plan. But so I came with her, followed her over, said, well, this will be great. Who can complain about moving to Italy, to Rome specifically? And then all these other things happened kind of along the way.
Well, you can't help but get yourself immersed in food when you're in Italy, and especially in Rome, because there's so many famous dishes that come from there. What was it that inspired you to create Eating Europe along the way?
So I also was working at the UN for a year. And then when that contract ended, I decided that wasn't kind of the best place for me. But then the big question was, so then what? What do I do? I mentioned before, I've been an entrepreneur. I had a marketing company. So the idea of kind of putting my entrepreneurial hat back on, wasn't such a foreign one. And I started to think, well, here I am in Rome. What could I do? And like you said, food, tourism, I mean, those are kind of two of the biggest industries, let's say, certainly tourism as a sector. And what I had been doing in those first couple of years while living in Rome, you get so many visitors, especially in the beginning when you move abroad, and especially to a place like Rome. So I got tired of taking everyone to the Colosseum and the Vatican and the Forum and doing, I mean, you can only do those things so many times, as incredible as all those sites are. So instead, I was like, look, you guys, probably by like the 19th visitor, I was like, you guys do the Colosseum. Tomorrow, I'm going to take you around my neighborhood. At the time, I wasn't living in Trastevere, which is where you guys did your tour. I was living in a neighborhood called Testaccio. Testaccio is a real locals neighborhood. It's a little bit off the beaten path. And I would take all my friends. We'd get up in the morning. We'd go across the street to the local bar and meet Armando, who was the owner and barista. He was about 72 at the time. And, we'd order our cappuccino. Then we'd stroll just 2 blocks away to the local food market. And I'd take them around and say, this is Maria. She's the one I buy all my fruit and vegetables. And I tell them a little about their story. And the butcher, Cesare, all these people who I got to know over the year or so I had been living in the neighborhood. And my friends would tell me, friends and family who came to visit, wow, that was one of the best parts of our visit. I think we enjoyed that more than the Colosseum, which is high praise. And so the idea started to percolate. And what if this were to turn into a business? And I saw that in New York, there were food tours. That was the only place I knew where they really existed. And then I kind of, after doing some research, starting to put together a business plan and talking to enough friends who kind of gave me the, I guess the ultimate courage or push to do it, go for it. Why not? I decided to launch the business, which initially was just Eating Italy food tours. And then over this 15-year journey, it grew into Eating Europe and expanded beyond Rome and Italy. But that was kind of the original inspiration, was really just kind of doing it organically with my friends and seeing kind of how much they enjoyed it and how much I enjoyed showing the neighborhood, the food, the people behind the food, et cetera.
People do food tours a lot. I mean, we have friends who are chefs and authors and whatnot who do food. Everybody's an expert these days in food tours. And we live in New Orleans. So we totally identify with you when people come here and they want to go to the French Quarter, yada, yada, yada. We're like, go to the French Quarter. We'll take you to all our favorite fun. We'll take you to all our favorite food spots and our neighborhoods. But don't take us there. It's the same thing. So we totally get it because New Orleans is like that. And
this, in New Orleans, especially, they always want to come to the real famous places and do the icon restaurants, et cetera, or the new hot chef. And what was interesting about Eating Europe and the Trastevere tour, you were taking us to little mom and pop places. Your tour was, and little places that had been around forever. And we kind of feel that way here in New Orleans. We like taking people to the little mom and pop places in New Orleans when they come and saying, you're not going to see this unless we take it to you.
Exactly. And which leads me to this question. So you started the company, and it's not easy to run a tour company. There's a lot of logistics involved. How did you do your market research to differentiate Eating Europe, particularly as it grew and scaled, because it's now, I think, 20 cities by this summer, to differentiate yourself from everyone else who's a food tour specialist in Europe or elsewhere? Because it seems like people I know, I won't say, who have no experience whatsoever, suddenly wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to do wine tours in Tuscany. And they're not even wine people. And I'm like, really? So how did you differentiate? Because you have to have that unique selling point.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And you're right. There is a low barrier to entry, to start offering food tours or wine tours, as you said. And so the original idea or vision that I had was to not just kind kind of give people some of the iconic dishes. In Rome, where I started, that would be like, Jewish style artichokes and soupli, fried risotto balls, and carbonara. But for me, the important thing was to give people kind of insight and a way of not just tasting the food, but meeting the people behind the food, hearing their stories, hearing kind of the story of that dish or of that, of that dish or whatever the item might be, as well as to kind of give people a sense of the neighborhood, the food culture. So from the very beginning, the idea was this is more than just a food tour. This is more than just the 6 or 7 things we're going to eat and how they're prepared, what's in them, etc. Like I wanted to take people really kind of on a journey through the neighborhood as I had been doing informally for my friends. And that's kind of really persisted as we've expanded from city to city and neighborhood to neighborhood within each city to really make sure that when people come on one of our tours, they're coming away and say, wow, we tried all these great foods, but we also learned about what it's like to live in Rome, what it's like to eat in Rome, what is the food culture. We met, like you guys did, Piero, who we call the king of porchetta, the roasted pork, famous street food in Rome, and heard a little about him. You met, Francesco and Roberto, the 2 brothers who run D'Enzo, which is a famous trattoria that we go to. And, and learned about, when and how people drink spritz and why that became such an iconic cocktail, not just in Rome, but all over the world. And so to really give more of a comprehensive experience. So the way we do that is we put so much time and energy into curating each and every tour. And so, choosing the right vendors, how to mix them, making sure that some of them are kind of sit down stops where you're in a restaurant and experiencing that kind of, that kind of dining. And then, 2 stops later, you're at kind of a hole in the wall where there's a ton of locals and you're getting that. And then you're in a deli and where people are coming in and out and buying, maybe shopping for their home. So also giving a real kind of complete experience. So you come away with a real taste of the city. So I think that's been that was the first kernel that of the very first tour in Testaccio, and that is still one of our unique, value propositions or selling points. All these 14 years later.
Of course, I think you started in Rome, and then you moved to Florence, and then you kind of took off. You also did something very smart. You've got really great marketing partners to help you promote. I mean, that's really what it's about. Where do you get most of your business? Because I think that's critical. I mean, we got it from a PR person, but where do you normally get? Where do your customers come from, and how do they find you? Because that's really what matters in getting those great reviews.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't find you, it's like the Field of Dreams movie. You can, just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come.
Right.
So you can have the best tour ever, but if you're not getting, customers, clients, then unfortunately it's not going to matter and you're not going to get those reviews. So, I mean, these days, in the very early days, I relied so much on TripAdvisor. We slowly grew up the rankings. And I was telling someone recently, in those early days, if you could make it on the first page of TripAdvisor, and it was just it was one thing called things to do. There weren't, food and wine. You didn't have all this segmentation as you do now. So if you could make it on that first page, which were 20 listings, and we did in the second year, that was all you needed. Nowadays, you need to be doing so many different things. So there's not kind of one simple answer. We spend a ton of energy and time and money and investment and creativity on social media, making videos, creating content, working with, you said, partners, influencers, like Casey Rose, who's one of our ambassadors. She's an incredible influencer on TikTok, and and Instagram and YouTube, and just has a really original voice. And she's done probably 12 of our tours. We work with hundreds of travel agents, most of which are in the US, but not entirely, and have really spent, I'd say, kind of 13 out of the 14 years developing and cultivating those relationships. Then, of course, we do work with all the major OTAs like Viator, which I think you mentioned, and Get Your Guide, and all those companies. And we also work with a lot of the large tour operators like Tauk and Rick Steves and Globus and Kentucky, and and so we're doing all these different things to try and bring people to our website, to our tours, and so it's a little bit of a lot of different things, which is really necessary these days.
I would think so. You expanded. I mean, I think you added Spain, 2 cities in Spain in this month, right? So you're in 20 cities, correct?
Yeah. We added we're adding 2 cities this month, Sevilla and San Sebastian.
Right.
We recently, in 2025, this year, added also Barcelona and Madrid. So really excited to finally be in Spain, just because, I mean, what an incredible culinary country. What an incredible cuisine that really ranges and changes over the many different destinations. And that was also where my first stop in Europe. I studied abroad in Sevilla. So finally being able to offer, Sevilla cuisine, but also these other great destinations was long in the making. And I'm really excited that we can do that. So
for our fans and followers, there's obviously several cities in Italy, France, there's Paris right now, opportunity, UK, London, and Edinburgh. Edinburgh's phenomenal. We were just there a couple of years ago. Spain, you've added Madrid, Barcelona, San Sebastian. I think is one of the great food cities. I actually went to language school there I did language classes, but I really ate a lot and did the tapioca. Went to all the great Michelin restaurants in Barcelona. And Sevilla is on our return. You've got Lisbon and Porto, Netherlands, Amsterdam, great dining city, Greece, Athens, a lot of opportunity there. Czech Republic, Prague, and Germany is there, and Berlin. Where do you want to go next?
I mean, there are a few. I would love to open up in Dublin. Of course, when you think about Dublin, or Ireland, you think more, I guess, about Guinness and, maybe the beer. But I'll tell you, I mean, Ireland has wonderful food and just incredible cheeses, local produce, the seafood. And just great stories. And there's so many incredible storytellers in terms of the kind of guides you can have. So that's high on the list, and we're working on that. I mean, for us, one of the keys is finding the right person in each city, someone who kind of shares our values, understands the vision, and can really bring it to life. And so Dublin is a city where we just haven't found that, that right match. When we do, then I know that's going to be an incredible tours that we're going to be able to offer. And, there's places like Istanbul, which is a personal favorite of mine, a little more off the beaten path than the cities we're in now and the cities that you just mentioned. But I mean, what an incredible cuisine and so much history. I mean, there are places you can go there that haven't changed much in more than 100 years. So just a one, and the markets there are incredible. So there's still a handful of cities. I mean, the fact that we're in 20 now, I think we're kind of getting to the kind of long end of the tail. Also because there's so much, we can also go so much deeper in each of these cities and start to offer different kind of experiences. So it's not just kind of expanding horizontally, but also vertically. So just a handful more. I mean, Dublin and Istanbul are 2 of them that are certainly on our radar.
I have to applaud what you do and the fact that you have people that work for you. We've only taken the one tour, and it was with a great guy in Rome named Davide. Thank you. My name as well. But he was wonderful, and he gave us a lot of history as well. So it wasn't just about the food and pouring the wine for us, because we did sit down and have a couple of glasses of wine with some pasta and this and that. But he really kind of gave us a historical perspective as well that went beyond food and the restaurants that we were going to. And I thought that was really interesting. So I can understand why you would really kind of have to find a match for your tours, because they are very intricate in that way.
And Davide gives cooking classes. I mean, he's a passionate cook. He also lives in Trastevere, so it was like a real local.
Yeah.
And for us, it was a special trip because it was an area that we had visited on our own, and we had the artichokes, and we went to the wrong place. So for anyone who's watching this, one of the great things is, Eating Europe will help cut to the chase and get you the trip that you probably screwed up trying to do yourself. And it was nice that, because we're so used to going on wine trips, and people just take us around and plan everything for us. So this was like going on a wine trip, but it was food. And we got to go to some terrific places. Dine blew us away. The burrata was so good. The souffle we learned about, which is like arancini, but it's rice and mozzarella and tomatoes, so a bit different from arancini, much bigger. And then we went to Innocente Biscottificia Artigianali, these tiny little cookies with this very, very old, we never would have found this place. Okay, let's just put it this way. We never would have found that place. And one of the interesting places for us, being wine people, and I couldn't help but pipe up when the wine came out to talk about the wine. I kept saying, do you think it's okay? But there was a place called, I've got my cards here, Spirito Divino, which is owned by someone who worked on like the Nobel Prize team in science, right? And then bingo, bingo, bingo. She is now researching very old historic Roman recipes, including the oxtail stew, which is stew of the working class, because Trastevere is where all the Jews lived, and we were ghettoized there. And there's an amazing cellar downstairs that holds about 7,000 bottles. And the entire structure was formerly a synagogue. Yeah, and Davide told us about the lasagna effect of architecture, which I had never heard before.
Well, we thought that was a great analogy.
That was just a great analogy about how the stones are built on top. But there was a replica of the statue of David that used to be in this place. And the history was so incredible. And honestly, we would have just walked past the place and gone, is that a synagogue? What's that? So that was what the difference was. And the group was small, so we weren't walking all over each other. Unfortunately, pleasant. And it took us to places that we probably would have walked just past, not knowing that they had this historical and cultural significance.
Very true.
Yeah, you hit upon so many things there that are really, all part of the value of doing the food tour. David, what you said with Davide, not just, and this is what I said at the top, not just talking about the food, but also talking about the history of these places like Spirito Divino, of the city. So you do a food tour and you're getting so much more than just, trying a handful of iconic dishes. And then these places like Innocenti, which you mentioned, which to me is like, that is the dream spot. It's down a small little alley you would never, even think to turn down. You walk in, there is a sign, but, it's not bright or bold or anything. And then you walk in and there's this oven that you've never seen before that's as big as like a
room,
maybe a large van. I was going to say a school bus, maybe not that big. Built in the early 50s. And, the place itself, she's the third woman. She took over for her mom, who took over for her mom. So third generation. And for a while, her daughter was working there too. So there were four. And she makes these incredible cookies. Stefania is her name. She is the nicest person, is there every day. And these cookies are simple, but so delicious. And she's got like 45 different kinds. And that, you go there and you're just transported and you get to hear her story, hear a little about biscotti, and that it's not just the one kind of cookie that we all know in the US, but biscotti means cookies in general. And so you learn a little bit about, kind of the language and what are Italian cookies and how are they eaten. And then there's other places like Dienzo, like you mentioned, which isn't so off the beat. I mean, it's on a small little side street, but there's a line of 80 people there every single night from they open at 7:30, the line starts around an hour before. And because of our relationship with them, dating, going back 12 years, we just walk right. We actually go in there before they open. Mm-hmm. So as everyone's queuing up, waiting for them to open their doors, they've already opened for us. And that's just, we're so grateful for having that relationship and having that opportunity. And yeah, you taste the difference. I mean, to me and to most people, that's one of the best trattorias in Rome. And you taste it with the burrata, with the freshness of the tomatoes, with their fried artichokes. So and then Spirito Divino, I mean, that is another place we've been collaborating with all these years. That wine cellar is 90 years older than the Colosseum. So to go down there and to hear about the history and some of the architectural finds, discoveries, and then also to be surrounded by, 7,000 bottles of wine is just such an incredible experience. It's one of my favorite spots on any of our tours. So yeah, it's all of those things you said, which makes these experiences so memorable. So I'm glad to hear it was such a great part of your trip to Rome.
Oh, it was worth it, because we would never have found the places. And we were at that point, we literally, and also we only had 2 days in Rome. It was like boiling hot. We couldn't have done it on our own. And I think what's important is, if you want that extra insight, basically, if you want an insider look, if you love good food and want to learn food culture and you want to learn about a neighborhood, which we really did. I mean, we had a couple of options. We chose, the Twilight Tour, Trastevere was perfect. It's a great way to just focus and not, have to spend your entire time with your GPS out trying to figure out where you're going and what's next. And we're a little spoiled now, because that's kind of how we've been traveling in Italy and elsewhere, because we go on wine trips. So it's really handy. And we look forward to trying some other ones. It's, are you going to ever expand outside of Europe, or are you just going to stay in Europe?
Possibly. It is something we've looked at and we continue to. No definitive plans at the moment, but yeah, that's definitely a possibility for sure. I mean, we are eating Europe, but I think we can solve the limitations of the name. And we would bring the same approach, whether we were doing it in the States or in Latin America or somewhere. I mean, trying to, weave together all these different elements, really try and bring the people behind the food front and center. And I mean, what I've learned about doing this in so many different cities in Europe and so many different countries is, you don't have to be in Paris or Rome or Florence or Lisbon. I mean, our food tours in Prague, which doesn't have, the same kind of fame in terms of its cuisine, doesn't have the same iconic dishes, in some ways can be even more fascinating and more rewarding, because you're discovering so many things for the first time, because you go in with, generally speaking, less knowledge than you would in considering, Italian food, which is so much more prominent in the US and around the world. So I feel like you can create an incredible food tour in just about any city. It's just about really kind of finding those places and doing the work to really pull everything together and create that kind of experience.
Well, doing the work's the hard part, because you've got to get the logistics, and that is a lot of work. Because we thought about doing it with the connected table, because we, people always ask us about, wine trips, because God knows we know everybody. But I get, I don't want to be a tour operator. I'm the big picture person. I would want to work with people on the ground to do the running around, not me running around leading the tour, because I like to run things. It's all about creating partnerships. I mean, this would do really well in New Orleans. I mean, we had some Italians over here from Montefalco producers, and we took them to Compare Le Pan, and just explaining to them what a hush puppy was. and
Right.
barbecue and jerk chicken. Like every dish we had to carefully explain because it's so different over in in Italy. And then
That said, they were fascinated by all of it.
and then they were going on a road trip
Yeah.
to Memphis and Nashville and Savannah
Wow.
for them, saying, okay, this is the city, this is the signature dish, this is where you need to eat it. And this is the restaurant we would do when you're ready for something a little better. And they were sending us pictures wherever they were going because they were trying everything. And I was so happy because otherwise they would have missed all of it, right? And you don't want people to miss things. You want people to have like the best experience possible.
Very true.
Yeah. And, in all of our cities, our guides, I mean, we tell them this, and I know they really kind of feel this way on their own. They're really the ambassadors for the city, not just for the local cuisine, but really, people are visiting all these cities on holiday, on vacation. And, so it's their job to really kind of bring it all to life, let people discover things, as we've been talking about, that they probably wouldn't on their own, just following their GPS on their phone or Google Maps, and really bring that to life, and then see the reactions when you do, like these friends of yours, like the people from Montefalco did, I'm sure, when you were taking them around New Orleans and then watching them taste their first hush puppy or jerk chicken and all the other incredible dishes and foods that you have in New Orleans, which is such an amazing food city for sure.
I remember we used to work with the Consortio Brunello de Montalcino when I had my marketing company in New York. And every year all the producers would come in and we had to find a meal. And I'll never forget, we took them to Blue Smoke because we wanted to have barbecue, and explaining macaroni and cheese to them,
To a Tuscan.
was just incredible. And then remember we went to Mama Nympha in Nymphas in
we
Texas.
Went to Nymphas in Houston,
Yeah,
which is the old historic Tex-Mex restaurant of Houston, and they were fascinated by it. They'd never had it before.
But you want to do that because otherwise they'll just go to what we found is like their importers would just take them to yet another steakhouse, an Italian restaurant.
Right,
and it's like, that'd be like taking us to a Southern restaurant in Italy. That getting inside, and you know what, Ken, every city, every neighborhood, every village has that local insider place. You just have to know the people who know the people.
And sometimes it's interesting that you mentioned, following your GPS on Google, because I do that a lot. We all do these days. I mean, you can use Google Maps and find the reviews there. I mean, TripAdvisor too, but maybe that's not as well used as it used to be. And so many times I find that like a place could have 4.9 star, 4.9 rating, and it just, falls short of what I'm expecting. And because the reviews, don't always match up, with the actual experience. And oftentimes it is a local that, could take you somewhere that maybe only has a 4.4 or whatever it is. But there's something about that place that, the travelers that are giving these reviews might be missing. So unfortunately, even though we have all this information now, and it's so easy to find restaurants just in 1 second on your phone, it's not the same as having a local take you there, give you the story, tell you what you should be ordering, tell you about how you should be eating that. Like if you took your friends to have crawfish, I mean, you need a bit of a crash course in how to eat these tiny little tails. And so that's all part of the experience. And you're going to come away with such a richer one than if you just kind of look on Google Maps and say, oh, this place has got a 4.7 and it sounds good and it's 2 blocks away.
Yeah, we don't necessarily follow reviews, even though it's my background. I don't follow the reviews and the ratings anymore. I look for that local. I ask local people. I'm a member of I'm a member of La Dame d'Escoffier International. So I always just look up members in the different cities and ask. And that's how we actually ended up discovering an amazing Asian restaurant in Florence that I never would have gone to, but it was spectacular. Yeah, Jing and AC Marriott, and I've sent a lot of people there now.
Porto Prato.
Yeah, just incredible. Is there somewhere you haven't been that you'd like to go to experience your own culinary immersion?
Yeah, I mean, I have traveled a lot, but it's a big world, so there's
Mhm.
lots of places I haven't been. I mean, I've never been to China. I've never been to Hong Kong, for example, as a city that, I've seen so many times in film and movies and popular culture. And there's something about that city. At some point, I'd love to go and be taken around, at night, kind of a late night food tour when everything probably comes to life. And that's certainly high on my list. Most of Africa, I haven't really been. Let's start with South Africa, Cape Town, Joburg. Not that those cities, I think, or that country is so famous for its cuisine, but like I was saying with Prague, I'd love to go there with the local and show me what I don't know, because I know very little, and I'm sure I'll be blown away. So those are a couple. In Europe, a lot of kind of Scandinavia I haven't really discovered. Sweden, Stockholm. I have been to Copenhagen. I think that would be another great city when you say, where could we expand? Great food there and really cool. Have you guys been to Denmark, to Copenhagen?
No, it's on our list. Our
Yeah, so
ever-changing bucket list.
really stylish and cool
Yeah.
and kind of a lot of amazing design in the food, but also in kind of the architecture and everything. So yeah, those are a few, but I mean, we could spend the whole podcast talking
Oh, I
about
know.
my long
We could.
wish list of places I'd like to go and eat in. So
You know where I have been that isn't on your list that I would recommend in Europe would be Budapest.
yeah, so Budapest was another
Yeah.
I was about to say.
Very good place with Buddha and Pest.
100%.
I was lucky to have gone there under the tutelage and care of the great late George Lang, who overhauled the Gundel and owned Cafe des Artistes. So I was kind of like Cinderella in Budapest when I went. And I think it's terrific. I think, David, I want to go to Japan. And I don't think I would dare go to, I've been to Japan. But I wouldn't go back to Japan unless I had someone really set up the tour, because I'd want to learn the sake as well as the different regional cuisines of Japan. That's a big trip.
Me too.
That's a big one, and you've got to have someone
help
curate that.
Yeah, that's such a hot destination. I know so many people have been going to Japan in the last kind of 2 years. And I've just been hearing about all the incredible food they've been eating. And I was there in 99, so it's long overdue. And you're absolutely right. I would want to go and be set up with different locals in all the regions to take me around and make sure that I am getting the real deal.
I was there in like 1987.
Okay, so
I had a client, and it was just mind-boggling, and it's mind-boggling. So you really want to do that, and the wine element always interests us because it's such an integral part of food and sake and beer and just
spirits.
It's spirits. Yeah. There's so much. I mean, when you go to Scotland, you're going to Edinburgh. We were in Edinburgh and we went up to Inverness and Glasgow. It's amazing cuisines there, just incredible. And you mentioned Ireland, some of the best salmon, and of course the stew and the cheeses are great.
Absolutely.
Just really fantastic.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I was invited by the Irish Tourism Board about 6 or 7 years ago. They were doing a conference and the theme was culinary. And so they invited me and some other operators around Europe. And they took us around on like a 4-day culinary tour where we visited farms and cheese shops. There's a famous one called Sheridan's in Dublin, and they have other locations. And I came away from that trip like, wow, the food in this country is so good and so fresh, and the people are so kind of dedicated. Yeah. And again, that was because I was set up, as you said, and I was taken to these places and got to meet the incredible people who were creating this food. And that's what made that experience so impactful.
It really is. I always feel when I see people looking lost, whether they're looking for wine in a store, or they're trying to find the right restaurant. We saw a lot of tourists in Rome trying to just figure out where to eat because it was confusing for them. I just wanted to take them all in my hand and go, let me give you a list. But, they'd probably be like, who are you? But, it is about wanting to help people have the best experience they can. And for many, this is their big trip. It could be their honeymoon. It could be their only vacation. It could be their one time with the family. We had a wonderful mom with a daughter on a trip, and we had a couple and another with a son. There was different people on the trip, and there was like us. And
they all seem to be American too.
They were all American. That may be because you had an American trip. I don't know. But they all came and they were doing the grand tour. They were all seemed to be going to Rome, Florence, and Venice. And you figure they only had this much time in Rome and this much time. So it was good that they went on the trip because they had a good experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Italy, I'm always amazed, even though I've been here for so long, just how many wonderful regions, towns, sites, I mean, all across the country. And yeah, most people, especially if it's the first time, they tend to do, like you said, the Grand Tour, Rome, Florence, Venice. And, how can you blame them? All three of those destinations are, unforgettable and places you can't miss. And that's why I encourage people, you got to come back and then do Puglia and do Umbria or Piemonte. And I mean, there's so many incredible destinations. And in those places, you're not going to be around so many tourists. So you're more likely to have a different kind of experience because those regions aren't as well known, especially to the American traveler.
Well, we were in Lucca and it was incredible.
Great spot.
That's a great example. And then we were in Orvieto, another great, and they all had their own regional cuisines and their own wines, and it was less crowded. Wow, we could talk forever because this is my favorite topic: eating, drinking, exploring, and inspiring. And I just can't wait to get on a plane again to go somewhere.
That is the truth.
Although we road trip a lot, so we find amazing places wherever we go because that's what we do.
Always on the lookout.
Yeah, always on the lookout. Yeah. Ken, it's nice to meet you in person. We have to clink glasses again when we are in Rome and actually meet in person.
I would love that. Yeah.
Or if you come to New Orleans, we'll show you our town.
I mean, that's one of my favorite food cities in the U.S. So I would love to take you up on that invitation.
I mean, we love New York, but we love New Orleans.
Yep.
So you've been listening to another delicious edition of the Connected Table Live with Melanie Young and David Ransom. We know you have lots of choices. We'd ask you to choose us when you listen to your podcast. Remember that we have been talking with Ken Dunn. The company is Eating Europe. You can find all the trips and information at eatingeurope.com. You can read our write-up about our experience on the Trastevere Twilight Tour at theconnectedtable.com. And always, we want to remind you that you have choices on how you travel and live. We want you always choose adventure, explore beyond your comfort zone in eating and drinking, and always stay insatiably curious. Thank you.